What's up, y'all? Alright, so I wanted to make this video and talk a little bit about capitalism and the alternatives. Now, I'm not too aware of how many different economical systems there are because I assume that we have capitalism, which requires some sort of currency, and then we'll have other forms of something else that doesn't require a currency. So I think a lot of people today are very attracted to this like Marxism, socialism, communism type thing. And this is a critique on leftism as a economic uh, um, thing, right? But it's not from the position where socialism or communism is like evil or bad or impossible. It's simply that people are not taking into account human nature and human psychology. So this is more about the human psychological aspects of what happens there. So a lot of what I'm talking about here comes from Gustav L. Bon, his book titled, I believe it was, The Psychology of Socialism. And this book pretty much, long story short, is telling us that socialism, or this idea of a moneyless society, was created for a specific type of human that currently doesn't exist, right? So, and we're gonna get into that right now. So, right off the bat, we have the incentive problem. And the thing is that incentives are not just economic, right? So, as of right now, one of the big incentives we have to work and to do things is to make money, because money allows us to buy the stuff we want, go to the places we want to go, and et cetera, et cetera. But there are other incentives, right? Sometimes people do things for fame, they do that for power, for influence, for prestige, for, these types of things, right? Um, Hold up. I'm gonna have to keep hopping in and out. The thing is that incentives are pretty much psychological engines. It's things that cause you to step out of this baseline, which would be laziness, which is the lack of motivation. So, for instance, ambition, pride, fear of failing, desire of mastery, desire of recognition are some of the things that cause us to not be lazy, right? Like for instance, as of right now, a big reason why people work is the fear of not having money. Because you don't have money, that means you won't have the resources you need to get by, right? And this is not a good thing, but when we sh- there are ways to alleviate that without removing the incentive completely, because what happens is when you remove the incentive completely, then the it, the incentive is no longer there, so there's no longer a reason to work. And this creates a few problems. For instance, something that would happen is, as of right now, we have jobs at different levels. There are simple tasks and there are technical jobs, right? Now, a simple task can be done by almost anybody. A technical job would require a lot of studying, training, and time and effort, right? Now, in a world without differential uh, rewards, right? Like as of right now, the technical job is rewarded with a higher paycheck, where the normal average tasks are rewarded with a smaller paycheck. If there's no money, then both of these are now being rewarded equally. Therefore, why bother getting all of the education and training for a technical job that isn't going to benefit you more than the menial job, right? Now, so to backtrack, to bring it back a little bit, there's this sense of like a dichotomy, right? Where there's like pain and meaning, right? So sometimes we do things, we're incentivized to do things to avoid pain. At other times, when it becomes a little more internal to our being, internal to our like psychology, it's more about the meaning behind it. It's about saying I accomplished, right? And likewise, there's either obligation or aspiration, right? So someone can try to achieve a great feat and have some sort of um, uh, highly technical job. Now there's that dichotomy where you have the technical job which pays a lot. It could be out of obligation because all right, I have the high paying job. Now I am able to, live very comfortably. So I'm obligated to aim towards high paying jobs. Or it could be aspiration, where you want this highly technical job because of again what it means. I've accomplished something. I am more educated than the average person. I can do things that the average person can't. Now the problem is when you're trying to create a moneyless society and a classless society, a lot of these incentives start to disappear. And without replacing it, people fall into laziness. People usually go down the route of least effort, right? You try to get the maximum amount of money for the least amount of work, etc., right? So it comes down to energy conservation and some sort of psychological homeostasis. The it's like a resting state for organisms, right? So what happens is that when you're trying to when you're if you have to exert effort, usually you do this for compensation, narrative, status, or meaning. So when it comes to jobs that people don't necessarily want to do, it really comes down to compensation. Now, narrative, status, and meaning are also powerful motivators, but what narrative would you spin to convince people to work in the sewer lines, right? Like maintaining the yucky parts of our infrastructure. What status or meaning comes from doing a extremely dangerous job that doesn't it's not that sexy, right? At the end of the day, when people choose to do the disgusting job or the difficult job, the dangerous job, and they usually do it for compensation. If you remove compensation, then what happens is now the only avenue you have is narrative, status, and meaning. And if the particular job doesn't offer that, now there's no incentive to do that job. So you remove in if when you remove those incentives, now you have jobs that have to be done, but nobody wants to do them, which is one of the problems with this moneyless society type thing because it comes down to where work is no longer existential, where I have to work to survive. It's now moral. I have to work in order to be good to society. And morality on its own doesn't motivate the masses. So it goes down the inevitable path that when you recognize that society is refusing to do a specific job and that job is absolutely necessary for the functioning of society, you're left with no option but coercion. So it really comes back to this idea of differential rewards. Now, there is a subset of the population that will do certain jobs because it's more of there's another incentive for them psychologically other than money. But the vast majority of the population are not going to experience that. And without placing this differential reward, saying, as a janitor, you can make this much money, but as a, you know, I don't know, like app designer or like someone that codes things, you can make this much money. As a doctor, you can make this much money, right? And so what happens is, without that differential reward, you fall into two options. Either you're going to take the easiest option, or you might not work at all. Because another problem with this moneyless society is that it's done under the guise that it's supposed to be less. Um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's done under the guise as if it's less abusive to some extent, right? So if you was to say I don't want to do anything, they can't really force you to do something, right? Or else it would be coercion, right? Now, if that's true, then why would you do anything? You could literally just stay at home and do hobbies and have everything handed to you. And the problem with the psychology around socialism and this moneyless society type thing is that there's a lot of assumptions about the goodness of people. And I'm not trying to say people are bad inherently or anything like that. It's just that uh, they fail to look at the nuances and the complexity of what humans are like and what they actually choose to do. And this leads to a society where people will say, well, why would I do X amount of school years and then another 4 years on top of that to specialize in this medical field when I can go and be a cashier, and all I really have to do is stand there for like 8 out like 6 to 8 hours scanning things, and I'm going to end up with the same amount of resources that the you know doctor that was studying for 10 years, right? So it just, yeah, right, you understand what I'm saying. But then the next level to that is that if there's no incentive to even be the cashier, then what is stopping the people to say I don't want to do that either? I'm going to just not do any of it. I'm going to just chill and Netflix, right? um not to be confused with Netflix and chill. Although there'll probably be a lot of that also because it's like, why work when you can just do whatever you want, right?